I'm gonna be very honest right now. Tower of Fantasy is not Genshin Impact, and I mean it very honestly. With the release of Tower Fantasies, there is a large amount of controversy surrounding that Tower Fantasy is just Genshin Impact clone. There is a huge amount of comparison between Tower Fantasy and Genshin Impact, and I can understand why because they're both anime RPG, but to be very honest, fundamentally speaking, they're a very different game, and I think it's wrong to compare them. Tower of Fantasy is an MMO, while Genshin Impact is more like a single-player gacha experience. If you guys were here during the initial launch of Genshin Impact, you guys might have remembered about similar take where Genshin Impact was just a Breath of the Wild clone, and Genshin Impact was consistently and constantly compared to Breath of the Wild. And let's look at where that took us 2 years later. Genshin Impact is currently one of the largest and the most successful game on the market, and nowadays if you look at Genshin Impact, I don't think you can call it a Breath of the Wild clone. And so if that comparison didn't work out 2 years ago, then why are we doing it again with Tower Fantasy, right? Without a doubt, the huge success of Genshin Impact have definitely inspired a lot of other games out there to do something similar, but at the same time, I'm pretty certain that Tower of Fantasy was in development well before Genshin Impact launched. The CN Tower of Fantasy server was released about 6 months to a year after the original Genshin Impact launch, which would imply that Tower of Fantasy was well in development before Genshin Impact came out, because games just don't magically get developed within 6 months or a year worth of time. If I really were to compare Genshin Impact and Tower of Fantasy though, I would, to be honest, agree that Tower of Fantasy have slightly more clunkier combat as well as potentially worse looking graphic, which by the way are definitely my personal opinion. However, Tower of Fantasy is not a game that is focused on these aspects. Tower of Fantasy is a game that is focused on its social aspect, being able to play with other players as a MMORPG should, and that's something that Genshin Impact does not have. I mean, eat my mic.
What's up, girl? What's up, girl?
Joining the spam! Joining the spam! Spam the world chat! Tower of Fantasy as an MMORPG is largely focused on the social aspect about how you can see other players overworld and interact with them. Maybe even ask them together to party up or to kill bosses together, which is a very common tactic to take down these bosses in the overworld, as they often require multiple players assisting you as they do have a lot of large health pool. But in addition, of course, in the end game of Tower of Fantasy, you will be able to party up with your friends and a party of 4 to do a bunch of dungeons. And keep in mind, Genshin Impact endgame, which is Spiral Abyss, is still solo. And of course, this game do have player-to-player PvP, which means that you can actually goof around with your friend or just mess with your friend around a little bit. Wait, I time zoned him. Oh shit. It's okay, I got him. Boom. Oh. Wait. Oh. Get him, get him, get him, get him, get him, get him, get him. Oh. Wait, this thing is so fucking disgusting. I don't know what happened. I hit. To tell you guys a truth, when I first saw an ad for Genshin Impact, I totally thought it was an RPG that I can play with my friends. I remember going up and chatting about this game with my friends and say, hey, look at this cool anime game. I can play as this characters, you can play as that character, and we can play together. It wasn't until the actual game launched we realized that that was not the case at all, and all our planning was for nothing, that it was really just a gacha game with anime titties. If you have been a long time follower on this channel, and if you're not subscribed, don't forget to subscribe, you might know that I actually do have a huge amount of friend group that like playing MMORPG together. And unlike popular belief, I do actually have friends in real life. You can even see some of these being reflected in my Lost Ark video or stream where a lot of us were playing Lost Ark together because it is a anime style MMORPG.
What the?
So when we hear about Tower of Fantasy, a lot of us were actually really excited, and to be honest, I was very surprised at how excited they were. But to be very honest, that is originally what we have hoped for in Genshin Impact, a anime RPG that we can play together, and unfortunately that just wasn't Genshin Impact. Now don't get me wrong, I still love Genshin Impact. It has a really good single player experience, and I'll even dare to say it is better than Breath of the Wild in terms of its overall single player campaign experience. But on the other hand, the thing that it couldn't provide us is a multiplayer experience, and that's exactly where Tower of Fantasy stepped in. It is fundamentally two different games after all. At the end of the day, there isn't a huge reason why you have to pick one or the other game to play. You could, to be honest, simply just play both. I mean, you log into Genshin Impact, you do your 15-minute worth of resin spending and your daily, and then you log out and you play Tower of Fantasy. There isn't anyone who say you can't play both games at once, and given that Tower of Fantasy is free, I don't think it hurt to try at the very least. Coming into the end of the video, I want to once again clarify that I'm not sponsors to make this video. I did previously do a sponsors video for them, but I promise you everything in this video is my own personal honest opinion. The reason why I'm making this video is because I really just don't appreciate player who is turning down the game without even giving a try themselves, and just even worse, just talking the game, but without even trying the game out. After all, the game is free and doesn't cost you anything to download it. Just make sure that if you do get into the game, you spend responsibility or just remain free to play. The biggest thing about this is that 2 years ago, we have a lot of same thing with Breath of the Wild. A lot of people were like, oh, Genshin Impact is Breath of the Wild clone, Genshin Impact sucks. And people weren't saying that because they tried out Genshin Impact and decided the game wasn't for them. People are saying that because that is a more quote-unquote popular opinion at the time, and they simply were just spreading quote-unquote hate, which I didn't really appreciate. Especially now that I'm a Genshin Impact content creator, I can tell you really that I really appreciate Genshin Impact, and Genshin Impact honestly is a really wonderful game with a lot of cool memory and experience. And to be very honest, I think that every single person in the world should give Genshin Impact a try. If they have previously tried out the game and dropped it on, maybe they can come back and try it again after so many patches and content update. And I really mean it when I think Genshin Impact nowadays is better than Breath of the Wild after so many updated, and they have learned so many things over the course of development with player feedback. And so if I were to say that about Genshin Impact and you should try it, then I probably should be fair to other games like Tower of Fantasy and say similar things, and that's why this video exists. At the end of the day, Genshin Impact was not a Breath of the Wild clone, and it's completely different. And it's the same here. Tower of Fantasy is not a Genshin Impact clone and completely different. And that's all really there is to it.